So you think you might be a type 3 on the Enneagram. Maybe you took a test or a friend told you they think that might be your type. Whatever the reason, I'm glad you're taking the time to dive deeper in understanding what makes up a type 3. We're going to look at 3 key things in this video that provide a high-level overview of the type 3 by starting with the type 3's core motivations, fears, and desires. I'll touch on a checklist of you might be a type 3 if, and lastly, we'll look at my type 3 cheat sheet. At a high level, how does a type 3 show up in the world? Now, if you're new to the Enneagram and you're just hearing about it, one of the key things that sets the Enneagram apart from other personality tools is the fact that it is a tool designed to look at a person's motivations versus their behaviors. So imagine with me, if you will, an iceberg. Now, when you look at an iceberg, you are only able to see the tip of it. There's so much more beneath the surface that you cannot see. This is similar to a person's personality. At the tip of the iceberg, we see a person's behaviors. For example, whether someone offers to help someone to their car with their groceries, or is the first one to volunteer in a corporate meeting. These are behaviors we can observe in an individual. What we don't see is what motivates them to offer to walk someone's groceries to their car or volunteer in a meeting. And that's what's under the surface. That's what the Enneagram looks at, is someone's motivators. Because when we understand what motivates someone, we are able to better empathize and understand. But most importantly, it helps us grow as an individual. The Enneagram is not about putting you in a box. Unfortunately, we're all already in a box of our own personality. The Enneagram is a tool to show us how to get out of that box. So we don't always default to being a type 3, but rather can show up in other ways. So let's dive into what are the motivations, fears, and desires of the type 3. A type 3 is known as the competitive achiever. They are motivated more than anything to ultimately to succeed, to be viewed in a positive light or admired by others. The fear is that if I am not viewed in this way, then I am insignificant or I don't have any worth. The ultimate desire being, I want to be valuable. I want to be worthy. And the way I feel worthy is through my accomplishments, through my achievements. Oftentimes in childhood for type 3s, the way they received love or felt seen as an individual was through what they accomplished, what they could bring to the table. And as a result of that, 3s have a really hard time knowing who their true self is because they are constantly looking to achieve the next thing that others will view as valuable or successful. When we look at the type 3 checklist, you might be a type 3 if you focus on projecting an image of success and competence. You believe your value comes from what you achieve and or produce. You feel motivated by recognition, admiration, and accolades. You adapt your behavior to match what others find impressive. You're goal-driven, hardworking, and focus on efficiency. You avoid failure at all costs. That's a key one. Or being seen as unsuccessful. You enjoy being admired for your accomplishments. You feel restless or unsatisfied when not pursuing new challenges. You fear being insignificant or viewed as a failure. You tend to suppress emotions that might interfere with achieving your goals. Now, in my experience working with type 3s, especially in corporate environments or in environments where achieving things is viewed as the ideal outcome, people can sometimes mistype and think that they're a type 3. Maybe you had a type 3 parent and that was spoken over you. What's important to understand here, if you're new to the journey, is it's not just about being goal-oriented or efficient. That could easily be any number of different types because, again, those are behaviors. The key to the type 3, that motivator, is ultimately you find your worth in what you can accomplish. And what's been lost along the way is your true self, who you want to be versus who you have to show up as. And that's where the Enneagram comes in to give you a guide on how to grow and not always have to default to those settings. As far as a type 3 cheat sheet goes, type 3s are very goal oriented. They are aware how others view them, and they're very good at reading a room. 3s will walk in and naturally understand how to position themselves. Now, unlike a type 2, where type 2s will shapeshift in order to build a connection with others, 3s might shapeshift, but it's more from the perspective of how do I present myself in a certain light based on the audience I'm in front of. I was doing a corporate training, and 3 at the table said, I know I tested as a 3, but isn't that because that's how I have to show up at work? But in my personal life, I see myself as a 2, or even in other circles, I see myself as a 7, which is oftentimes very characteristic of a 3, feeling like, again, based on the environment you're in, you have to show up in different ways. A 4 at the table said, I would never do that. 4s are too authentic to shapeshift in those environments, even in a corporate setting. When it comes to a 3's overall communication style, they are very persuasive and charismatic. They focus on success. They make very good mentors because they naturally look for the end goal and come up with an efficient way of how to get there. Their strengths are they thrive in ambitious and leadership environments. They are results driven, but this can lead to being more of a workaholic and neglecting their own personal values. It can be hard for a 3 to get in touch with their own emotion because they fear if they do get too in touch with their own emotions and their true self, people won't like that. It won't be worthy. They won't get the admiration that they desire. Now, the pet peeves for a 3 that can really trigger them is when they're working in a group or have people around them that are just inefficient. They want to get things done quickly and fast, and they definitely avoid failure. I know there was a type 3 that I was working with, and she had gone through a pretty big launch of a company that had failed. But she said, fear not, I already have a book in the making of all the things that I learned, and was able to so quickly turn it into a success. That drive, that motivator to avoid failure can influence a lot of the behaviors that we see. So it's important for the type 3 to find a way to balance their personal life and their work life and melding those together. But ultimately, people are not drawn to type 3s. They're charismatic, they're successful, and they're goal-oriented and tend to thrive in organizations where there is a next rung to achieve because they will focus on it with all of their being. If you look on the right-hand side, you see some numbers there. You see a 3, and then you have what are called the type's wings, a 2 and a 4. So the 3 actually has access to the 2 and the 4. And this can be used, again, to get you out of that box of your own personality. 3 also has access with their arrows to 9 and 6. And depending on how they work with these numbers, they might go there in full awareness, or it could be under stress. I'm not going to go in depth on that because I really want to keep this at a high level, but I do think understanding how the Enneagram is connected, and while you have your home base and your home base doesn't change, you still have access to these other types. So now what? All right, everything I just said is really resonating, and you do believe that a type 3 is your home base, your core motivator, what drives you. Well, the next step is to study, to learn more. Some incredible resources that I'll even link in my notes here are Beatrice Chestnut's book, The Complete Enneagram, or Personality Types Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery by Don Riso and Richard Hudson. Now, if you're more of a podcast person like I myself am, because you can listen to my threes might like this, that you can listen at two speeds, so you can listen to more faster. The Enneagram 2.0 is an excellent resource. Enneagram IRL in real life for typology will all do a great job. And I recommend looking at the episodes that focus in on the type 3 before you go deeper into learning about the other types. Then explore. While the Enneagram is these 9 types, there are so much more to it, like subtypes, which I'll be coming out with a video on that. And in that, I talk about what your subtype, whether it's self-preservation, social, or one-to-one. We can dive into the different centers of intelligence, understanding while the 3 falls into the heart center, they're actually the most removed from their emotions. So 3s can think, what does it really mean to be in the heart center? Because I don't relate to that. Well, that's because you probably have turned that off in an effort to drive you forward and achieve more in your life. Looking at the arrow work, as I just touched on that previous page, around how the 3 goes to a 9 and a 6. There's a great opportunity for growth there. And then final, and this is my favorite step, the practice of self-observation. Now, why I love the practice of self-observation is because it allows you to observe your behaviors without any judgment. To observe when you are having a conversation with your partner or your boss and you get really mad and you're short with them. No judgment. Why? Why did I snap? Why did I get angry? What was causing that tension in me for me to respond and react that way? Once you do start to put this practice of self-observation into place, you'll start to realize more of these drivers and these motivators so that you don't always have to default to being a type 3. You don't always have to be achieving and driving towards that next goal. In fact, you can put a pause and maybe try to figure out what you're most passionate about. I was listening to a podcast episode, the Enneagram 2.0, and they interviewed a type 3 individual. And I loved her story because I think it showcased exactly what the journey can look like when you are getting out of your type 3 behavioral patterns. She had spent her whole life building a huge business with multiple locations and had been very successful. She employed over 100 people and really felt like she was giving back and doing her all to help others. But she wasn't paying attention to what was going on in her home life. And unfortunately, her son was in a horrible accident. He didn't die, but it brought into perspective where her time was going and what she was spending it on. So she stepped back from her business and she started to reflect on, what do I find interesting? She picked up looking into the hobby of painting and the life that it gave her to simply sit and reflect and actually get in touch with her artistic side. And doing this with no intention of selling her artwork or trying to make it big, but simply as a practice that was life-giving. This is what the Enneagram can offer you, the opportunity to grow and to get outside of that box. I hope this episode was helpful as you start your journey along the Enneagram if you are a type 3. If you would like to go deeper and are interested in doing an actual typing session where we go for 1 hour and I ask a series of questions to better understand what your core type is, please go to my website, 927coaching.com, and let's schedule some time. I would love to dive deeper into the inner workings that make you you. Ultimately, the Enneagram is a great tool to start to grow in self-discovery, but no test, no Enneagram coach like myself can tell you what your type is. Only you are the expert on you. Even the loved ones in your life who love the Enneagram and might have even turned you onto this can tell you your type. So I'll leave you with that today. You are on a beautiful journey of self-discovery in which only you will know what motivates and drives you. So hopefully you can take some time, even today, to start observing and reflecting to better get in touch with your true self. Thank you so much.